technology workers taking big salaries and putting real estate prices up. Toronto's experiencing that right now. There's American markets that pay really well. There's Toronto, which pays probably second best. There's Vancouver, which pays third best. This is happening. I really don't want Vancouver or Toronto to become a San Francisco. San Francisco is a great place, but if you go to San Francisco or Seattle 15 years ago, it's a different place than it is right now. And I hope we don't do that to our cities.
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
Just talk 2 hours maybe and we'll be good to go.
Okay. All right.
I could probably do it.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tom Storey Show. We have another brand new episode for you, and this is a real estate podcast where we cover real estate topics all across Canada. If you've been watching this show on YouTube, all we ask is hit that like button on this video, and if you haven't already, make sure to join our growing community and subscribe to the channel. Our goal is still to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And if you're listening on the audio platforms, first of all, thank you. And if you like the podcast, if you give us a rating on Apple Podcasts, that would be amazing. Now, into the show. We have a very exciting guest this week, Andrew Clark, who currently works at ECI Software. He's a founding member of MyLasso, which is a CRM for real estate developers. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I know Steve's excited because
I'm super glad to be here. I'm going to cut in. I'm super glad to be here because I know Andrew quite well, and he's one of those guys that's a little too smart for the room sometimes, so he can't figure out what the hell he's saying half the time. But so full disclosure, Andrew and I are quite good friends, and we both work in real estate in two totally different worlds in the same world. So I'm excited to kind of learn a little bit more because we are, if Andrew and I are hanging out, it's usually with a beer in our hands and talking about whatever, and it's not actually the workspace. So I'm glad you're here, man.
Yeah, no, glad to be here. I think, one of the secret rules there is even if you don't know what you're talking about, if you sound convincing, people will believe you.
That's Tom's whole career.
Yeah. I'll tell people if you own more than 5% of the homes on a certain street, you can legally change the street name. That's one of my favorites. And if you say that with confidence, everyone will believe you.
Yeah. Awesome. That's great for a farm area.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Andrew, let's get a little backstory here for Tom because he has no idea. You were part of a company from the startup. Is that right? Were you right from ground level?
Yeah, actually, right before it was founded. So actually, a couple of my friends I've known for a very long time. So one guy I've known since grade 2. Another guy we met, probably grade 7 or 8. We all still work together today. We worked for a digital agency. So we worked at a company that used to capture form data. People said, hey, I got a real estate website. I have this form that says contact me. And they were like, I don't know where to put this information. So that was actually the foundation of what we did. We made websites, we made forms, and then we said, hey, let's put this form into a database. And then let's give people tools to figure out what to do with these people after they're in there. Like actually make sure they do follow up with the people who said they wanted to be talked to. So we did that for a bit.
So that's called in the industry, for anybody that's not fully familiar now, a CRM, which stands for
That
what?
is customer relationship management, which is kind of making sure you follow up with the people you said you were going to. Giving salespeople and marketing people tools to figure out what they should do. Times change, people change. I guess, human nature hasn't changed that much, but everything else seems to change pretty quickly. And we just try and make sure that we support the companies we serve so that they can actually grow their business.
And are you now, when you first started that up, right? So a CRM, were you primarily working with individual salespeople at that point, and then it grew to a point that then bigger corporations and developers were now using your system as well?
Actually, the first customers that we had were large multifamily builders in the Vancouver area.
Okay.
So we were actually building not for resale, but for new sale. Generally speaking, we were building for that hole in the ground coming soon condo building. And we were coming into that market where, 2006, people were saying, I need to be able to sell 300 condos in 3 hours and I've got a lineup outside. So the tools we had in that cycle were a little different than what we have today because things have changed. Then people were worried, hey, how do I get a lineup of people outside? And then how do I process 300 contracts because everything's already sold? Really. So it's changed a bit, but we've had other cycles like that. So it's not like, it repeats. So we try and make sure we have the tools that we can deploy when it's going to repeat. We have the right thing for that job.
So the problem of the consumer, or I guess for you, the person that's using your program, has what switched from was, okay, we're selling these things too fast. We need the platform to help us do it. And now it's a different problem. So now what's the feedback you're getting today from the developers and people that you guys are working with that are using your platform? What's their issue now that we're trying to solve for them?
Well, at the end of the day, it's still sell my real estate.
Sure.
But I would say if I give you a little bit more backstory there, Lasso was founded I joined Lasso in 2004. The company was founded in 2005 out of that digital agency. We grew it until 2018. We're still growing it now. But at that point, we were acquired by the company I work for now, which is called ECI Software Solutions. ECI is a vertical specific ERP company. So don't have to prompt me on that. Enterprise Resource Management.
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you for telling me what you're talking about. Yep.
It is in different verticals. The vertical I work for is residential construction.
Okay.
We have a full platform to support your business. So we do accounting right from the consumer side. Look, you want to put it on your website? We'll put your homes up there. We'll be able to customize them so people can pick them out. We have another product. You can pick out your lot. So you want to pick out your lot, your home, go into a CRM, say, I'd like to buy this, work with a salesperson. Eventually, you're going to write a contract. Then the builder is going to say, I'm going to actually build that for you. And they're going to need to get trades in to do it. They're going to manage material purchasing and all that. So it's really the full suite of managing a home building business. Lasso is the part where it's for sales and marketing. And that's what I came with.
This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by the best Canadian in-person real estate training seminar that there is. Masters Academy, presented by Richard Robbins International, November 14th and 15th in Northern Toronto. Listeners and viewers of the Tom Storey Show podcast can receive $200 off of their ticket to this exclusive event by using the link in the description right now down below this video. These unique session formats include things like Small Giants, lightning rounds, and even genius interviews with top producing real estate agents from across the country. So if you are a real estate agent anywhere in the country, you need to be at Masters Academy November 14th and 15th in Toronto. I myself will be there. I'm flying in specifically for this event. Both Tom and I will be there in person, and so should you. So register today for Masters Academy 2022 happening November 14th and 15th. That's a 2-day event, both days from 9 until 5 p.m. at the Universal Event Space in Northern Toronto. Sign up right now using the link down below in the description. Save, and now back to the podcast. I'm going to jump in here because this is exactly why I wanted you on, because you are responsible for figuring out what people are going to, because if you're designing software, basically, right? Like you're more of a project manager role, but your company designs software to help builders, but not help builders today, right? Like you have to be forward thinking in how you're going to, because you got to build the software that we're going to use tomorrow. So
Exactly.
This is a really good segue kind of into the market right now. The market stinks. So now what? Because you're the guy that is looking at future development 2, 3, 4 years down the road, not, hey, interest rates are going up tomorrow.
Exactly. And we've been here a couple of times. Like, I think what we're looking at right now is, in my eyes, closer to the 80s than it was a 2008 crash. But to answer your question, what do I actually do? I try to figure out what software we should make for our customers to support their business. And what does that actually mean? Business software is, if you boil it down, it's an amount of time you're saving people. Mm-hmm. And you're saving how much time for which person. So it's the variable there is whoever's time you're saving has a different rate. If you think about people hourly rates, how much does it cost to have this person? How much does it cost to, buy their time to do the work I want them to do for me? That's what I'm trying to manage.
Are you having any conversation with your developer clients now? Because I think we're at this interesting point in time where we're going to see prices drop off probably for a little bit longer as interest rates continue to go up. I think that's just simple math in terms of purchasing power. There's a bit of uncertainty in the market. And some developers that own land that want to build are kind of land banking, and they're saying, maybe government's going to come in and say you're not allowed to do that anymore. You got to start developing at a certain point. But who wants to build homes when no one's buying them? But then we have to think like further out. So I'm just curious from your perspective on, I think short term here, we can say, okay, prices are decreasing. Something has been solved in the Canadian real estate market. But long term, we still have an inventory issue, specifically in the markets that all of us live in, not in all of Canada. So we need to think long term and not just say, okay, we've solved it right now. So long-winded question, as I typically ask on these podcasts, but it's like, what are the developers thinking right now? Like the people that you're talking to on a daily basis, are they excited to build right now, or are they waiting because it doesn't make sense?
Well, I think it depends on who you're asking, the market you're asking about. I think if you look on what's happening, you look at Toronto, right? There is something like 250 cranes up there right now.
Yeah.
The next biggest city, I think, is LA, with something like 50. So we're building like crazy. I think Canada looks a little different than the US in the fact that we build more multifamily and we have two really concentrated markets. I think looking regionally is what you have to do. If you look at Seattle, they're not building much. But if you look at Texas or Austin, they're building like crazy. If you look at Toronto, they're building like crazy. So it really depends on your market, what people are doing. And it is waiting for the right time to produce the real estate that people are going to consume, right? So I think it's regionally right now. And then it's do something different, not for just construction, but you know what? In a market like we have right now, people are building more multifamily in North America. And that happened in both 2008 and in the 80s. When there was a bad market, we come out of the bad market by doing things like building more rental units and building more multifamily units, because we need to get those people back into the buying. We need to get the new home buyers into the bottom of the cycle so that we can push people up it.
One of the questions I really wanted to ask you when Steve said you were coming on, and I don't know if you're going to have an answer to this, but I'm just curious. So one of the things that we've seen in the new construction market, and I work in the Toronto market, is for the most part, people believe that most of the people that buy new construction are not even living in Canada, or they sent money to a cousin here that's buying the property. But we don't have stats on this. This isn't backed up anywhere. What I've been told is the only people that know who's actually buying these new projects are the developers. So do you know who's buying these new projects? Is it money from outside Canada? Is that causing the issue here? Is it locals? Because for the most part in my market, and maybe it's different where you're servicing, but these projects are marketed to investors. They're not marketed to end users for the most part.
There are certainly people who are marketing overseas. I think to answer your question, we need to look at what we have and why we have it. So in the last few years, you've had money cheaper than inflation. And that's not just known to us. It's known internationally. Canada's a good place to buy real estate. If I can borrow money at 2% and I can expect to get 4.5% on it, then I should borrow as much money as I can to make the 2.5% minus whatever costs, right? You're going to make the difference. That's not a healthy place for us to be. Money has to be higher than inflation, which is what we're seeing right now with the rate hikes. We're trying to bring that back in line so that people don't speculate and just borrow and buy as much as we can. That also causes the prices to go up because people are saying, you know what? Okay, I had my 2%. The next person says I'm going to get 2 or I'm going to get 1. It's fine. It's like that infinity game. I'm just going to borrow as much as I can. It's kind of a thing I've tried to avoid myself personally getting wrapped up in, but it's hard.
We were talking with some people in my office yesterday, and we were talking about like the 3 reasons why people buy anything in life, right? And it's emotion, logic, and fear are the reasons why people make decisions. And if you buy something emotionally, then you try to back it up with logic. But then I think the last 2 years in everywhere across North America, most people were buying on fear. Because it's like, well, if I don't get in now, will I ever be able to get in? And that's probably not a good place to come from when you're making a financial decision that is likely one of the biggest you'll ever make in your life.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a good summary there, and I think it's a totally true statement. And I think emotion and fear, like fear is the emotion, right? And the problem, one of the biggest drivers is fear of regret. So
Yeah.
usually people talk about FOMO, fear of missing out. So that's the same thing. People don't want to miss out. And you have this problem where, well, everybody is raising the price of real estate because we're all borrowing tons of money and we're all getting giant mortgages and we're all pushing the prices up because it's okay because money's cheap. So that's kind of, we're seeing the result of that right now. It's not good for people, but it's what we have. And if you missed out, if you didn't do that 5 years ago, everybody's just wondering, well, when is it going to come to an end? I think we're seeing that now. So the people who maybe bought in the last year or two are wondering, well, was this a good idea? Was I the last person in? But historically speaking, the rates we see now are good. They seem high because, they're higher than they just were. But that's not really a over time reason to think about things. It's just now.
You had mentioned earlier that you think now is closer to the 80s than 2008. I would say a general consumer listening to that goes, uh-oh, that doesn't sound very good. So can you give me kind of a breakdown on why you think what's happening now is closer to what happened then versus what, because 2008 we were affected, but nowhere near what was happening in the States. We weren't doing the same type of loans. Is that why you think it's different?
Well, I mean, I do generally look at North America. So there are a lot of people in Canada that make their money in the US. I mean, I am one of them. I work for now an American company. But if you look at what happened in the 80s and you look at what happened in 2008 and you look at what happened now, 2008 was really bad debt. It wasn't just cheap money. And in fact, I think I'm trying to rack my brain for what I purchased. I purchased in 2009 and I probably purchased in 2006. My first place I bought was 4.5% interest fixed. And I thought that was a good deal. So it's not crazy. But that was round about the 2008 issues. Now, if you look at the 80s and now, we're talking inflation, cheap money. That's a different problem. I don't think we're going to see something as bad as the 80s. I think we learned our lesson. We know because we've seen it, hopefully. And that's why I think things are going up quickly now to make sure it doesn't continue to run away. It's that thing. As long as money is cheaper to borrow than you would expect to make in even inflation, then people are going to put money in. And I think the thing that happened over the last few years is it kind of became consumer focused, where if you followed things like GameStop and you looked at what happened with, regular day traders, right? If that's a thing, more people jumped on the wagon, right? And I think that's what's happened. It's like previously it was usually people with lots of money, lots of security who would play this game and they'd be okay with making their 2% on a giant amount of money. But I think everybody jumped in over the last few years.
We've talked about this on this a lot, and I want Steve to jump in here because I know he's been patiently waiting to ask a question. But, when, GameStop is a good example, the real estate market the last few years, when like your next door neighbor is telling you should invest in something, that's when you know it's probably not going to end well. When someone that has no idea what's going on is getting interested in and becoming a perceived expert on something that they learned about a week ago on Twitter, right? I have a question for both of you, and I know Steve has a bunch of questions for you. So when we look back and we compare to, inflation and interest rates and looking back, comparing to the 80s, do we have one thing that could save us now that didn't exist in the 80s, which is the stress test that came out in 2018? Steve, do you think that is going to make any difference here? Because we're basically at that 5.25 now, which everyone was stressed at that got a mortgage beginning January 1st, 2018.
I mean, you should be able to make those payments, right? Everybody was stress tested there. You should be fine. Whether or not people are good with their finances is a completely different thing, right? If they're spending their money on other stuff. I know everybody's complaining about, just the cost of everything running away. But you should be able, if you were really balancing your books properly, you should be able to make those payments easily. because you were stress tested at 5.25%, even if you bought 30% higher than now, right? I don't know if it's going to necessarily save us. I was earlier in the year, I was thinking, they're going to relax this stress test. I don't think they're going to relax this stress test anytime soon now, because they want, guys are qualifying at 7.5% right now, and we're only going to go up from there.
I think there's a little bit of a question here is what do we need to be saved from? Or we're saving ourselves from ourselves because we collectively bought stuff and drove up the prices. So cheap money.
So we collectively totally did that. And Andy, I don't know if you're okay. I openly talk about, you bought an investment property. I bought an investment property.
I bought one too.
Tom is an investor. He bought one as well. So this screen represents the problem right now, right?
Yeah, I mean,
but it is like you said. What we kind of went through was I looked at this is exactly, you have summed this up better than anybody, I think. I looked at what it would cost me a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, to buy a property at 100% financing, and it broke even. So I was like, okay, I'm buying something. How can I not? This would be silly not to. And then I think about a week later, you were like, tell me about this. Right? And then, I mean, we all ended up buying something that when we could. I don't think that's a bad thing, because obviously I think anybody that has the ability to increase their net worth probably should. Right? I know the YouTube comments will say otherwise, but I think everybody that has the ability to become better and do more and provide more value and become worth more to the world, and that includes real estate investing in my portfolio, I think they should do it.
I think it's, I break it down. It's a numbers thing for me. I think a lot of people in my family are finance people. My dad sat me down when I was 12, and I had my first job was picking blackberries. He said, you got $500. Here's stuff you could do with it. And I remember at that time, he said the same thing to my brother, and my brother bought a snowboard. But he gave me a list of investments I could make, and I bought my first stock, which was Coca-Cola Bottling Company. I watched that, and I learned pretty early you could make money with money. Now, I actually thought for a while, okay, maybe I should make a career out of this. And I thought, maybe not. There's not really any value to society. Yes, people are going to argue over that one. But for me, it's not the contribution I wanted to make, right? So, roll forward, talk about the current investment situation. I look at it at the time, 5-year fixed rate, you could get 1.7%. Historically, you're going to go up 4.5%, right? And rent is on top of that, not the capital gain, right? So you've got 4.5%-ish rent, depending on what you're buying. More expensive property, less rent, less expensive property, more rent. But whatever, 4.5% in capital gains or expected growth in the asset, and 4.5% in a dividend interest payment. So you got 9% expected growth on a cost of 1.7. Now there's costs in there, you have to manage the place and you have to pay interest on your mortgage, stuff like that. But it's still only the 1.7%. At the end of the day, I kind of said, I can't not do this. If I could, hey, I would just buy a new primary residence. But the market's a little crazy right now. Everything's going in, 4 minutes somehow. And it's going with multiple offers. So I said, what do I do to keep into this? Well, the thing I can do, which isn't super risky for me, is buy a second property.
And both of you, when you bought your second properties, looking back at it now, or are you both still happy with your purchase decision?
That was going to be my next. So Andy, you had this measurement of 4% per year. Now, here's what's gone on. And because our investment properties are fairly similar, different areas, but let's call it fairly similar. Let's say 35% growth since we bought that. Now it's coming off,
sure.
But at one point you saw 35% growth. So you saw almost 9 years of growth in the following 12 months. And now we're going to see a fallback. And let's say it drops another 100,000 from now, right? If that's the case, are you still happy with that investment? Personally, I am, because my plan was to get that 35% in 10 years. Right. And I think we're still going to be at 15, 20% when all this comes out.
I think it's fine. I don't expect to sell it. Like, I think it could be something that I help my kids stay in the region with. But I think the real answer is going to be when I come to refinance it after the 5-year term is up.
Yeah.
Ask me then.
Right.
I kind of have this thing that I say to people around me, look, rent goes up and mortgages go down. So if you have a place, you'll do better over the long term. So I would say, ask me when I renew. Maybe I'll say, boy, this is more than I thought. But ask me in 10 years, I'll for sure say it was a good idea.
I think that's it, though. Like you just said it perfectly. It's like, why are we making any type of investment decision that is tangible like real estate if we're not at least having a 10-year perspective? Like, I look at what's happening now with some of my properties that have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in total value, and my mortgages have gone up. And I'm like, yes, this sucks now, but if I freak out and sell everything, myself in 10 years is going to say, you were an idiot. Because you should have just held, just hang tight. When it's good, you're happy. When it's not good, you're sad. And when, and it's easy to look at it and go like, for both of yours, if yours were up 35% in the first 12 months, even though you can't technically open your bank account like stocks or whatever and see that, right? But again, that never was real unless you sold it then. And it doesn't matter now until you refi and I would expect, because I don't think anything's changing, at least for when your renewal's coming up in terms of the rental prices. Like in BC, can you guys clarify this for me? If I know you have the amount of rent that you can increase, which is typically lower than maybe it should be. But if the tenant moves out and a brand new tenant moves in, can you charge whatever you want, or is there still a cap on that?
Currently, you can charge new market rate.
Okay.
There are rumors out there that the new NDP government, should they get reelected, will cap your previous rent at that same amount. Now, if that happens, I think we see a mass exodus from the investor side, right? Because there's now very little reason to do that. It will bring house prices down and it will reduce the amount of rentals, meaning renters will be in real tough spots because most of those people aren't like, sure, a percentage of renters come back and get into the market, right? Like they're trying to get into the market. The majority of renters, I would say probably likely more than 50% are going to be renters for their entire lives. So you would be screwing those people if they decided to do that. Because I think, sure, house prices will come down and that's supposed to be a good thing. But as we're seeing right now, house prices coming down is not a good thing because rents are going through the roof. And I do know, for instance, Andrew, I did the calculation on mine. Actually did it on a video on my channel. And if we're at today's rates, I'm $400 more a month that I have to plug into this place, right? So at some point, I'm hoping that my tenant moves out. Because, I mean, right now, could I get $400 more per month for my unit? For sure. I know your unit, so I know you can get a lot more than that. And if they stay there, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt in 3.5, 4 years when you got to refinance.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like, you know what, the moral dilemma. Am I adding fuel to the fire of raising the market? I mean, I chose to, keep the rent or not do anything. I'm under market rate for what I'm doing now, which is okay. Good interest rate, under market rate. Maybe in the future I get better rent and I pay higher interest. But, back to what Steve was saying a minute ago, Canada has a pretty high ownership rate. It's high 60%. I think it's like 68% last I looked. There's going to be 30% of people who want to rent or can't buy and rent as a result. So those are the people that really do get hurt.
I'm worried about rentals right now, truthfully. Like I don't know if Steve had told you, but I do the news a lot here in Toronto. I do CTV live, and I did it last night. And I'm more careful about choosing my words on the news recently because they've not been nice to me in the headlines they use because no one actually watched the interview. They just take one little snippet. And the only thing I said last night that I'm like, oh, they could clip this one I was like, I don't know if crisis is too big of a word, but like I'm worried about rental prices right now because I'm listing a rental property that I own today, and and this might sound crazy to some people or right about to others. It's 670 square feet. It's in a good location, downtown Toronto. It's a 1+10. There's no parking, and it's going to lease for $2,900 a month.
Yep.
And I'm not happy about it. But what am I supposed to? And here's the thing: if I list it at $2,500 a month and say, you know what, I just want to break even on this. I'm not going to gouge the market. You know what's going to happen? I'm going to get 6 offers on it, and it's going to lease for 29. Because it doesn't matter what I put it out for. It matters what the demand's going to be. And we're seeing these rental prices come out, you know, in different markets, and it's doing the average. But if you look at the average, I always put in with the places where people want to live and the places where people don't want to live, but they have to live. And if you look at the places that people actually want to live, rent is insane right now. I think we're up 30% now in Toronto in the last year. Like, the rental market now is what the sale market was in February.
Yeah, because there is a legitimate shortage of where people can, like, that's nothing illustrated the shortage more in my mind than that fact, right? It's just shifted. Like, the shortage isn't necessarily the way people think about it. The shortage is how many people, how many roofs over their heads.
Right.
How easily available is it? There needs to be a certain vacancy rate. And the vacancy rate is near zero. And that's probably not healthy.
Well, if you look at the decades, you know, leading up to this one, we were building millions of homes more per decade than we have in the last. And we didn't start this one off to a crazy building boom. We had a stall out. We sold a ton of stuff, which didn't help. So we're pretty far behind on needing homes. I think one of the other things you're talking about with rent there is people went to, okay, I want to buy in this place. Can't afford it. I'm going to plan B. Can't afford it. I'm going to plan C. Can't afford it. Now things are starting to come back down. Interest rates are going up. People are saying, I'm going to rent. And it's going to contract in that order. So I speculate that the markets which were long-term established probably didn't make up, they weren't a plan B or C in the last, let's say, 10 to 20 years. Those markets are going to come down a lot more than the primary markets. The primary markets where people wanted to live, like you said, the place people wanted to be. Rents aren't really going to come down much there, and prices are going to be coming down a lot slower as well.
Yeah, and I mean that's really well said, because if you look right now, and not that the suburbs are not places people want to live, just to be clear before I make this point, but if you look at, you know, Steve, where you are is not the core of Vancouver, you're outside a bit. And what I've noticed in, you know, because I service pretty much the core of Toronto, all the markets outside went absolutely crazy the last 2 years, like insane. And now they've come down a ton, where the city of Toronto has obviously come down like everybody else, but nowhere close to outside because it didn't do what they did. So if those were, quote unquote, the B markets before, they're also seeing the biggest drop right now, which I think is pretty clear in the data.
And that has to do with people's opinion changing of what they want to do. Like, so much of this argument about affordability and everything else, and what the last 2-3 years has done, so much of it is tied to just what people wanted. Like, legitimately, so many people were just like, I can move an hour out of town. I can get 4,000 square feet instead of 900 square feet. I'm moving there and it looks cheap, right? And now we're shifting back out of that. So much of the problem, I think, that was created in conjunction with very, very cheap money was the fact that the needs shifted so quickly, and now they're shifting back basically just as fast, right? And that has created a big shift in the outward markets. And then the inward markets, it's not like a ton of people fled their properties in Vancouver. Like, they left, but did they sell them? Did they go buy another property, right? Like, there was not a big dip. You almost feel like there should have been a bigger dip in those areas like Vancouver and downtown Toronto, and there really wasn't.
And there's like a whole bunch of other things in a similar vein happening. I mean, you look at San Francisco or Seattle or other markets that have been impacted by, you know, technology workers taking big salaries and putting real estate prices up. Toronto's experiencing that right now. I mean, generally speaking, you know, there's American markets that pay really well. There's Toronto, which pays probably second best. There's Vancouver, which pays third best. Like, this is happening. It is. I really don't want Vancouver or Toronto to become a San Francisco. San Francisco is a great place, but if you go to San Francisco or Seattle 15 years ago, it's a different place than it is right now. And I hope we don't do that to our cities.
This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by Karrasch Real Properties. That's right, my co-host Steve runs an amazing real estate team in the Fraser Valley. If you're someone looking to get more insight of what's going on in the Fraser Valley real estate market, I would highly recommend reaching out to Steve and his team. They're going to tell you what you actually need to hear, and they're going to exceed your expectations all the way throughout the transaction. I've met Steve and his entire team in person, and they're all people that are really, really passionate about what they do. And a lot of their business comes from repeat and referrals, so it's no surprise that they've continued to be in the top 1% of the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board for many, many years. They service Cloverdale, the Fraser Valley, and Surrey, and they know what they are doing. But don't just take my word for it. They have over 95-star Google reviews online. If you're looking for good advice that's not salesy with real people delivering really great results, I would highly recommend reaching out to Steve and his team. You can find them online at krproperties.ca, or in the show notes. You can go in there and you can book a call directly with Steve or someone on his team at a time that works best for you. If you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in the Fraser Valley, Cloverdale, or Surrey, I highly recommend Karrasch Real Properties. And now, back to the show.
And I hope we don't do that to our cities.
Oh, I think we're already doing that to our cities, or at least in Vancouver.
Are we specifically talking about the tech workers, though, that have great, huge salaries, and that's why San Francisco rents are $4,000 for a tiny apartment?
That's what caused it there. Yeah. I mean, there's also regulation that moves stuff around, provincial or state regulations, that tax preference, headquarters moves. That's sort of the migration angle to this. It's not the same reason somebody went from, say, Vancouver out to, an hour out and then 2 hours out. But the ability there as well, with the times we have now and people's ability to work remote. I mean, I've been working remotely for probably, 7 or 8 years now, full time. And there's lots of people who have been able to move remote and don't want to. So two sides to what Steve was saying. People moved out because they could. People move back now because they have to. And that's making the contraction happen as well.
We've also seen, though, like I know in my personal business with, meeting now so many people on YouTube, a lot of the people we're meeting, most of the people we're meeting are remote workers, IT workers, that sort of thing. I'm amazed at how many of those people are choosing to move to a more expensive area like, Surrey, Fraser Valley, Vancouver for other reasons. Right? Like they don't have a head office in Vancouver, but they're going, I'm not going to spend my free time in Edmonton anymore. And I want to move to somewhere that's a little bit nicer and more conducive for maybe the lifestyle and the weather and those different things. So we're actually having people migrate in that have really, really good incomes that don't need to be here. And in our minds, we're thinking like, oh, those people are going to move out to the sticks and just sit on their computers and do whatever. But that's not really what we're seeing at all.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, there's lots of other variables just other than just work if you've got your remote work situation already figured out, right?
I have a question for I have a question for Andrew, because I know your personal situation. Stop me if you want to stop at any point in time. But Andrew is the opposite of me. I am
good looking, handsome, confident,
smart, not too chubby, all of those things. I am of the mindset that like lowest payment for the most part matters to most people. And Andrew, you have the theory of like, I don't care how much it almost costs me to borrow the money. I want the lowest amount owing. Now I say that with a little bit of tongue in cheek, but you are similar to Tom in this, where if the right property comes up for you, you are doing an upsize tomorrow in even a crazy interest rate situation.
It's the ultimate money, right? And Canada and the US are different in this. We have a 5-year fixed, which is a thing people buy. In the US, you got 30-year, which is like, why don't we have that? I don't know. I would love that. But we're going to refinance often. So it's a matter of finding the absolute cost of borrowing, which is, well, how much did I borrow? Did I buy 300,000 at 5%? Or did I borrow for the same payment way more money at, I don't know, 1.5% or 2%, right? Then when I renew, I still have to pay all that money back. So at the end of the day, I'm going to say, well, buy as much as you can for as little as you can, right? And don't worry about the money. Like, obviously, you still have to worry about the money, but the thing you want to do is it's the same reason I would buy in a down market, right? If you have $1 million place and you want to go to 2 million, if the market comes down 10%, then the gap, you have 900 and you want to buy it for 1.8. So there's $100,000 difference. How long does it take in payments to pay the interest of $100,000? Depends on how much you borrow, but you're probably going to win if you pay a higher rate for a little term and then you ultimately spend less money.
See, that's like literally you just described my situation. I just sold one of my investment properties, and the only reason I sold it, and I did very well in it, my cash on cash return, I 4 times the initial investment I put into it over the 6-year period. Now, those 6 years were 6 good years, and that was truly luck. I had no clue that was going to happen, but that property only went down, I don't know, $75,000 to $100,000 in value, where I now want to take that money and buy a house that's down $300,000 from the peak of the market. So I guess hypothetical question for both of you. Let's say there was $500,000 left on each of your principal residences, right? If you received a check for $500,000, I know Steve's answer because he's risk adverse. If you received a check for $500,000 today, do you invest in more real estate or do you pay off your principal residence?
Do you want to go first?
I know. I'll go first. Personally,
Yeah.
what would I do? I would immediately pay off today my mortgage, and then this is.
Well, you don't have to say how much is on your mortgage.
Then I would also buy a new investment property.
Okay, that's not fair. What my question should have been, let's say you got the exact amount of money that would pay off the rest of your principal residence mortgage in one lump sum.
I would pay it off today. I would pay it off today. Yeah, and that is just because that is actually what I'm actively trying to do. Every extra penny I have right now is going to pay off the very small HELOC portion that I have, and then I have a relatively small mortgage, and I would like to get that gone. I listened to a podcast with Dave Ramsey. You guys know who he is? A financial guy, has a
cut up your credit cards. Cut them up.
Yeah, that guy, right?
Yep.
He is, and this is where I'm assuming I can get there one day and feel that way, but he has $600 million net worth, 0 debt. And he's like, the feeling that I get from knowing that I owe nothing to anyone ever is worth totally like turning my nose up at maybe the next 400 million, because like, how much do you really need, right? So what do I want, $1 billion and half of it's leveraged, or do I want 600 million debt free? And he's like, the power in what that gives you to make your daily decisions is worth every penny of maybe not making more money.
Andrew?
Yeah, I would say so, probably out of the bounds of the things you asked there, but I might suggest, if you look at what's happening right now, it depends on your interest rate on whether or not you want to keep the mortgage.
Because I'm sure the rate you have, you probably want to keep.
If you got a rate 3 years ago, you probably want to keep it, right? But your question is, do you pay it off? Do you buy another place? If you look at the way the market works, look, if we go into a recession, and maybe an average recession in Canada, depends, 2 years or 2 months, 10 months, hard to say. It's pretty varying. But if you look at what happens for things you can invest in, stock market, real estate, the stock market goes down first and comes back first. So you could, if you had a good interest rate, and you better have financial security if you're going to do something like this, you could invest in the stock market, wait for that to come back, then go back into real estate. That's definitely the most risky move. And I think one of the things that you have to watch out for, and a lot of people haven't probably thought about this, is being able to tell people the truth comes from having strength. Strength comes from what Steve was talking about. When you have the ability to say the truth, then you can lose it if you over leverage yourself and you start worrying about it. Like, mid-level managers, some of them are really, they're worried about falling instead of growing. And so they hold on to what they have and they don't make the best decisions sometimes.
So would you pay off your house?
I would pay off my house and buy an investment property.
Okay, I like it.
Hey, same answer. Look at that.
Well, I mean, because that's kind of, my situation is different because I didn't sell my principal residence to jump up to my next principal residence. I sold an investment to potentially buy my 10-year house, right? So bit of a different thing where I would rather put it all towards the place I'm going to go live in next. But I would probably agree. The one thing I'd like to ask you, Steve, so obviously, like, I made a joke about Dave Ramsey. People love him or hate him. There's not much in between. I think a lot of what he says is absolutely true, and there's a reason why he's so successful. Do you believe that mortgage debt with a penalty attached to it is anywhere close to the same as credit card debt or any type of debt? Because mortgage debt, I can sell a property. I just paid a penalty to sell my condo, and it was $4,500 to break my variable rate mortgage, 3 months interest. You could probably do the math on what I was paying. I was like, okay, that's totally legit, totally good. That I'm fine with that. So if you're looking at mortgage debt, do you look at it like the same type of debt as? I mean, obviously the payments are not the same.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Like, I think credit card, I've never had credit card debt. I've never carried once ever. No, sorry, that's true. Not true. Last 2 years ago, I had an issue where the bill payment didn't come out on the right day. But so that was I saw like $1.25 interest hit my credit card. And I was like, what the hell is wrong with you guys? And they're like, oh, we can set that up on auto debit. I think if the government truly cared about their citizens and the debt load they had and their citizens' financial responsibility, credit card debt and bad debt and car loans would all be lumped in the same way you qualify for a mortgage. But you don't need that, right? Like, I am so anti any debt. By the way, I pay off my truck on Monday. It's
going to break down on Tuesday. Yeah.
It may. And
next week.
here's how my brain works. This is how stupid I am. When I bought my truck, Andy's about to get super mad at me right now. When I bought my truck, it was 0 down, 0% financing. And I looked at the payment, and it was, I don't know, 7 years at like, I don't know, $700 or $600 a month or something like this. And I was like, no. And I put down half of it, and my payment went down to like, yeah, look at it. He's shaking his head at me right now. But I was like, listen, the headache, here's how my brain thinks. The mental wear down that payment takes out of just my day-to-day thinking. If I would have had a $700 a month payment, even though I technically lost money to do it, I was okay with like a $200 a month payment. So I put the rest of the cash down, and I was like, okay, well, I have to do something here because I know it would be stupid to not take advantage of some of this. I actually went to the dealer and I said, listen, you guys are offering 0% financing. What if I just pay cash? Can we get the price down $2,000 or $3,000? They're like, nope. They're like, you have to take the 0% financing. And I was like, okay, well, this doesn't make sense. But I literally have now 7 years of $200, and I think it's $80 a month or something like that. And it's paid off tomorrow. I'm going to drive that truck for another 10 years, by the way. Sorry, Tom.
You know what I noticed? Can I just jump in real quick? In that truck, I was told by your wife that the GPS you use in that truck is like an 8-year-old machine with maps that are not even updated.
No way, man. It's way older than that. The GPS in my vehicle is one of those old Garmin's, and she bought it for me when I got my real estate license in 2008 so I could find places. Now, I have updated the map about 6 or 7 years ago, but that GPS is at least 2008, if not older.
Andrew, let's get back to you for a second here. First of all, did Steve make a dumb move on that car?
Oh, absolutely. Look, the money, if we can get free money now, the inflation is going to make that money worth less. So you basically shifted that to be your problem. Somebody said, here, I'll take that problem on, and I'll do it so I can sell a truck. And you said, no worries, I'll take both of them.
See, both of you just answered that. Like you both would have made that decision on logic, but just you each have different ways of looking at it, right? Same decision, but different ways of.
I don't know. I think there's a difference between logic and reasoning there. I think he used reasoning. I used logic.
Oh, no, I would say, yeah, my side is probably emotional. The emotional toll of seeing that payment come out when I had never, ever in my life, before the age of 35, I had never had a car payment. I was just like, I can't have it be $700 a month. I can't do it. Even if the rest of that might, now at that time, what was I making in the bank on that? Like 0.05%. Like I would have made very, very little off the interest, but still I couldn't do it. And that was definitely an emotional thing, because the logical thing is what probably Andrew would have done, which is, okay, how can I turn that extra money that I'm not paying into more money that will then build?
Exactly. I don't want to swim upstream here. I mean, I don't need to make life hard. I'm not aggressive in the fact that I would like to borrow lots of money. I'm risk adverse as well. But, I think about things like cars, and I ask myself, well, okay, why didn't I buy, say, a fancy car when I was younger? And it's because I would look back on it and I would say in 10 years, I spent whatever, 30, 50 grand and have nothing. Versus if I invested that money in something that would grow. I guess one of my sayings, I say to myself, look, just buy things that go up in value.
Right. Simple enough.
Real estate goes up in value. Cars don't. Yeah.
Well, let's go back to the market here for a second. So, Steve had mentioned that you're in a position that you're thinking about, you would buy in a downward trending market if the right opportunity presented itself. I'm in that same mindset right now. I'm actively looking. Is there something that you are looking for, not specific property type? Like, are you trying to see if the market does something different here for the next few months, or do you not care? You're buying this property when the opportunity presents itself?
When the right property comes, I'll buy it. I'm not really worried about the market right now. I think, yeah, you'll pay maybe a little bit more, but where I'm sitting, I'm like, I want to be in the right place for the long term. I don't want to buy something. I've been where I am now for 13 years. So I've passed my kind of 10-year rule. Don't buy for less than 10 years. I guess there's some exceptions to that. If you had a super hot market and you're growing, your career's growing, whatever's happening, there's exceptions to that rule. But for myself and where I am, I want to be 10 years. I want to make good long-term decisions. And I want to say to myself, like, whatever I buy, if I'm buying it to live in it, I want to buy it for 10 years at a minimum. Probably the next thing I buy will be my last house.
So then to take out your own personal real estate decision, this is a question that Steve put on the list, which I'm going to ask you, and you're not going to have an answer, but I'm going to ask you anyways.
I don't remember what I put. I'm sorry, Andy. I don't remember what I put.
When's the bottom of the market going to happen?
Oh, there we go.
Short answer, 6 months after the interest rate decision goes no decision. So my guess is the way people work, right now it's probably taking people 45 days to adjust. So they're getting to the midpoint and they're saying, oh, okay, it went up. They get used to it. It might go up again. I'm going to buy now.
Right.
And so that's happening sort of, it depends on who you ask. I think some people are saying it's taking 10, 15 days. Some people are saying it's taking 45 days for people to adjust and accept what's happening. But I think we got to get interest and inflation in line. And then when people realize it's not going to be going up, people will enter and the market will stabilize.
I mean, it's kind of just like, it's the analogy of no one wants to do it. They want to get in line and be told to do something when it makes sense instead of just doing it when they actually want to do it. And I mean, that's just, I guess, human beings. It's the herd sheep analogy, which I'm not saying that in a bad way or a mean way, but it's just like, I think a lot of people are waiting for certainty before they do anything. And that's when the market will, trend upwards. I'm going to say, I'm using that word lightly, where we'll start just like seeing some little growth from the fall that we've seen. Steve, have you seen any change in your market in the last little bit? Tons. Okay.
Tons. It is going. We sold a property, unconditional, multiple offers, over asking, deposit in hand the other day. It is shifting back toward now. Nothing like it was. Don't get me wrong here. Prices aren't crazy. But the amount of deals that we are writing now hasn't been this high since the spring. So I'm trying to figure out, is that busy market? Is that people going, okay, most of the rate hikes are probably done and we're going to try and come out the other end of this? I do think your calculation is right. Somewhere between 30 and 45 days after a hike, it picks up again, right? So there's a very good chance that, what was the last one on the 7th? So we're just entering 30 days now, right? And the next one's on the 26th, 27th. So we're probably going to see a period of 2 weeks here where it has a little bit busier spin on the market, where people adjust and normalize. But we are seeing crazy busy markets. The difference in now, like I'm starting to see those posts again on Instagram where realtors are like taking pictures of how many shoes are at the front of their open house, right? Like that's, I mean, that might be the leading indicator in the marketplace, right? Like, I don't know, but I don't know. The part that is very tough right now and where a lot of agents are going to struggle, I think, is the amount of deals that are getting accepted and then not having conditions removed. It's showing the inexperience in the market, and that real estate agents are working with unqualified buyers. So they're just so eager to get out there and do it that they're not properly qualified, and everybody's shocked when subjects don't get removed and their financing didn't come together. And I think it's more of an experience thing, because likely those people shouldn't be looking at that level of property in the first place.
I was looking at our September numbers, which weren't actually very good. It felt like the month was good, but then the numbers didn't tell me the month was good.
Yes, same here.
And our year over year, our sales were down 44% from September last year. Again, different time, but still, that's a huge difference, and because people are uncertain right now. The number that caught my eye is our new listings to the market was the lowest it had been in 20 years in a September. New listings. Because sellers are like, okay, well, if the market's not good, because I see a news headline, I'm not selling my house. Okay, great. Now the buyers are slowly looking for opportunities again, and there's not as much inventory. So this could be a little blip here before the end of the year where we're having inventory issues. Our buyers are complaining that there's not good options.
But that is what's going on out there in the marketplace, and why the doom and gloom doesn't really work right now is because you don't have people that need to sell. Right?
Andrew, for you personally, are you, because you're probably looking at properties on a daily basis, if you're actively thinking about it, are you thinking, oh, there's lots for me to look at here, or is it frustrating for you as well?
Well, I'm in maybe I'm typical, maybe I'm not in this case. I want to move in an area very close to where I am. I'm pretty established where I am. My kids go to local school. They're in a special program. So it's like, I want to be where I am right now. So I'm super picky about my location. Mm-hmm. There's almost nothing that I think is suitable. And there's still are those ones. There's, you look at what's on the market, and there are those people who probably just have priced too high and have been there for 6 months.
Right.
If you haven't sold now, your price is wrong.
Yep.
So it's not going to get any better. I think to your question though, what's happening with this blip? I mean, I've always looked at the stock market and I've said, look, that thing moves faster, but it doesn't move totally disconnected to real estate. So when you see that recovery starting to happen and you see a sustained recovery, I think that's going to be a leading indicator of the real estate market coming back.
Yeah. The final thing I wanted to bring up and chat about before we wrap it up today is I had shared a survey, and I know, Steve, you saw this, and I had just done a video on this on my main channel where I had asked the people that watch my channel, just where are you right now in your real estate goals just for the rest of this year, right? So not much. There's 26% of this year left, or whenever this comes out, maybe 25% left of the year. Not looking to buy or sell was about 60% of the people. Click that. Makes sense. That's actually, I would expect that to be higher, actually. About 20% of people said somewhere in between, I'm going to buy and I'm going to sell, and I'm just curious what my house is worth. So thinking about it. And then 22% said, I'm looking to buy an investment property this year. So there's 244 votes. So simple math. That's a good chunk of people that are saying, I want to buy, but I am not going to give any supply back to the market. And that's where I'm going. I don't want to be the realtor that says, that's just super bullish always, because it's not a good look. But long term I am. And if I look right now, more people want to buy than want to sell. And just mathematically, that's going to cause an issue at some point.
Yeah, for sure. And I would agree with you on long term. Like if you look over a 10-year period and you say it's going to average out to 4.5%, we have these weird markets like Toronto and Vancouver, which have been going up, but that's not new either. Like
Right.
Vancouver's been going up, outpacing other regions since the 80s. Like it's not new. If you look at why people want to live in Vancouver, it's because you have mountains on one side, an ocean on the other, a border on the other, and the last one, mountains again. So you have 1 hour by 2 hours driving distance for all of the people who live on the West Coast. And well, plus the island. Some people live out there. But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's a land issue.
Right. Yeah.
They
I
say
don't know.
that too in Toronto, though. They say that too in Toronto, and I've been to Toronto, and that is the flattest place I've ever. That's flatter than the prairies, man. So I don't know what the. I think it's just a land issue of being close to what people want to be near, right? That's probably the bigger thing. I want to wrap. Actually, Tom usually asks me near the end, Steve, what are your final thoughts? And I actually have
He never has anything to say.
a question. No, because I want to know what somebody who is not a real estate agent has to say about the future of real estate from your side of not necessarily your side of things and necessarily what you do, Andrew, but from the tech side of things. Is there any big disruptor you see coming to the marketplace in any way that will impact maybe us as real estate agents or the buyers, or what is the next big shakeup, if anything, in real estate technology?
Well, I think consumer access to information is changing a lot. So what you used to do 5 or 10 years ago, if you called your realtor and you said, how much did that place sell for? That information is now becoming public, and informed consumers are the competition for people who are not changing.
That's perfectly said. Yep. I mean, like you look right now, the realtors that are losing the most amount of business are the ones that are not staying in touch with their clients and not showing them that they have a value proposition. Or they're losing their client to an online lead generation site that, Andrew or one of his colleagues built somebody else, and they're now getting your client because you gave them more information than you were, right? Like, I think that's the people that should be worried right now.
And it's that thing, you go back to it. You need to be remarkable, hopefully in a good way, right? If people will talk about what you've done and how it's different, then you're doing the right thing. Hopefully it's different because you did something better. You think about what people need and you ask them why. Like, I guess that's one of the things with my, I had kids. I'm a product manager, so I try and figure out what problems do we need to solve and why is what I try and do. Kids, I ask why all day long. You should ask why. Why don't people move? Right? If you drill into that, people will say, well, I got to sell my house. I want to build a house, but I'll have nowhere to live in the interim. I got to hire a moving company. I got to do all this other stuff. If you want to do something, get to the problems that cause inaction and try and solve them. Some of them are really hard. When people start solving those, like, hey, if you buy a house from me, I will give you a new house and I'll give you a place to live after selling your house until that house is done. Those are the things. Solve a hard problem and then you'll make a difference.
I was told very earlier on in my career that if you can solve somebody's a problem, they will pick you over their mother to get the thing done for them. Like, whether their mom was a realtor or you, like in my example, if you can come in and say, I have the buyer for your house and I can put you up in this rental for 6 months as you're buying the new property, they will go, yes, you solved my problem. Right?
And in BC, we are no longer allowed to do that. So thank you very much, NDP government. That's a pretty good wrap up, I think. We are now allowed to solve even less problems legislated by the government.
Andrew, for people that have listened into this episode and maybe want to learn more about the company that you're currently working for, ECI Software, or just get your opinion on things, because I think this was super educational. I really appreciate you coming on. What's the best place for them to go to potentially connect with you?
Check out our website for ECI Solutions or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm A Clark T, I think, up there. Andrew Clark, you'll find me there. There are no other Andrew Clarks that work at ECI Solutions. There's plenty of other Andrews, though.
Great last name, by the way. It's my middle name, but I've got an E on the end of it, so
almost right.
I like it. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode. Hope you all have a great day. And on behalf of Steve, Andrew, and myself, bye.
And remember to like and subscribe and all that stuff. Thanks, Andrew.